So first of all, just again, I want to thank Chazaq for putting this together. It's a really beautiful thing to get Jews to come together to learn during the summer, especially when there's a lot of distractions around. It's very, very nice. So it is during the 3 weeks. It is the 3 weeks. Sure. It is during the 3 weeks. And the focus of the Jewish people during the 3 weeks, as it should be, is on the fact that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. It's on the destruction of the temple, destruction of Eretz Yisrael. So just to begin to talk about the focus, a little bit of what we should be thinking about during this time, I want to quote to you what it says in the Zohar Kaddish. The Zohar, right in the beginning of the Zohar, Davdala, right in the beginning of the Zohar tells us the story of the death of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. The Zohar tells us that after Rav Shimon Bar Yochai passed away, one of his greatest students, Rav Chia, fasted for 80 days consecutively in order to be able to merit to see Rav Shimon Bar Yochai in heaven. So Zohar tells us that after 80 days of fasting, Rav Chia was given permission to see a little bit into the world of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai after his death. And the Zohar tells us that during that whole experience of Rav Chia in heaven, visiting Rav Shimon, the Zohar tells us that he heard a great, powerful voice emanating from heaven. And it said the following thing. The heavenly voice said, El yoinim tamir and tzatumin. The heavenly voice screamed out and said, all the tzaddikim who are hidden and mysterious, Einayim hamashaytes b'kol ha'olam, and all the angels above whose eyes are gazing upon the world. So this heavenly voice is calling to all the tzaddikim and to all the malachim and saying the following message. Hibitu ru'u tachtoinim hayishemen hastumim b'charachechem. The voice said, all the tzaddikim and to all the malachim, all the angels above, look down on earth at all the people that are sleeping and are hiding in their little caves, as the Zohar says. Hisayru, that you have to wake these people up. And what should you tell them? You should tell them, Mi mikem ashahafa chayshech la'ar v'tam mar l'masaik. That who amongst you, the heavenly voice came out and said, who amongst the Jewish people on earth have merited to turn darkness into light and bitter into that which is sweet? Ad shalei bolakan, while you're still on earth. And the Zohar continues, Man d'lei mahapech mimir l'miska, a very strong statement. Whoever does not in their lifetime turn bitter into sweet, Lesle chulka b'ayalma, has no portion in the next world. That's what the Zohar says. Very strong statement. So this idea of turning bitter into that which is sweet, turning darkness into light, the truth is, we found this in the Zohar. The Medrash says the same exact thing. The Medrash in Parashat Kisisa says that Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu how to daven. And Hashem's lesson to Moshe Rabbeinu about davening was the following thing. Shalom da'akash baruch hu eich l'spalafanav. The Medrash says that Hashem told Moshe, this is how you're supposed to daven. And Mar Kach, say the following thing in all of your prayers. Asay es hamar masok. That a person should daven to Hashem, instead of taking away that which is bitter, turn that which is bitter into that which is sweet. That's what the Medrash says. The Baal Tanya said in one of his svarim, he writes the following thing, Kizeh kol ha'adam. That in truth, this is the essential purpose of a human being's life on earth. The only reason why we're created is to accomplish this, to turn that which is bitter into that which is sweet, to turn darkness into light. That's what the Zohar says. So this idea is, obviously, if the Zohar says it, if Hashem said it to Moshe Rabbeinu, it means a lot of things on very, very deep levels. But the truth is, on a very, very simple level, we all do this all the time. You know, I'll tell you very, very quickly, there's a story. The custom of Baal Shem Tov was to engage regular people in conversation. He would ask people all the time. He would ask them about, how's the business, how's family, and all these things. That's what he would do. So his students once asked him, why are you wasting your time talking to people about even frivolous things? Whatever, you should focus on loftier things. So Baal Shem Tov told them, let me explain to you why I do this with the following story, a biographical story. The Baal Shem Tov said that I was orphaned as a child from both my parents when I was 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, both my parents passed away, and there was no one to take care of me. It was a whole long story about what happened. Eventually, he found his way into a secret society of tzaddikim, and this secret society of tzaddikim raised the Baal Shem Tov. They raised him physically and spiritually. When he was 16 years old, the Baal Shem Tov said about himself that after being raised amongst these tzaddikim, he was on the level where he knew all of Torah, he knew all of the writings of the Arizal. And it happened to be on his 16th birthday, the Baal Shem Tov said, he spent his birthday in meditation out in the fields. And he said what he was meditating on, he was saying certain chapters of Tehillim with certain meditations of divine names and unifications of the writings of the Arizal, very, very lofty things. And he was all by himself, secluded from all humanity in the forest. The Baal Shem Tov said that on that day when I was having those deep meditations, Eliyahu Hanavi appeared to me. And the Baal Shem Tov said that was a strange thing, because he said, I saw Eliyahu Hanavi before, but never by myself. It was always with other tzaddikim and so on, but by myself, this was the first time that Eliyahu Navi appeared to me alone. And he said that Eliyahu Navi, when he appeared, he had this huge smile on his face. So the Baal Shem Tov said, Shalom Aleichem, what are you smiling about? So Eliyahu Navi said the following thing. He said, in heaven, while you're here by yourself, making all these great unifications and thinking about God's name, it causes a great stir in heaven. Hashem's very happy. But there's something else happening at this moment that Hashem is even more happy about. He said, in the town that you live in, there's a merchant, a very, very simple Jew. I think his name was Aaron Shloima. I think that was his name. And his wife's name was Lata Rivka. Very, very simple people. They didn't know anything. And this couple, whenever people asked them, how's your day going? Their response was, as Jewish people say, Baruch Hashem, thank God, everything's okay. Even when it wasn't such a good day. Even when it wasn't such a good day and the business was not so good, he would say, listen, Baruch Hashem, thank God, Hashem's taking care of me, Baruch Hashem, Yom Yom. That's what he would say. So Baal Shem Tov said the name of Eliyahu Navi, that Eliyahu Navi told him on his 16th birthday, that as happy as Hashem is with my meditations and divine and unifications and so on, Hashem is much more excited when a simple Jew just says Baruch Hashem on a day that wasn't so good. When a day's not so good, on a day that's bitter, and a day that's dark, and a Jew says in response to that event, Baruch Hashem, you know what, Hashem's taking care of it, I don't understand why, but I know somehow it'll be good. At that moment, that Jew is turning that which is dark into that which is light. He's turning bitter into sweet. And said Eliyahu Navi to the Baal Shem Tov, Hashem takes much more delight in that than the great unifications that you're doing by yourself. And the Baal Shem Tov said that from that day on, I decided within myself that my path in life is not going to be seclusion. It's not going to be by isolating myself from the rest of the world. It's going to be the opposite. It's going to be getting involved in regular people's lives and getting them to say Baruch Hashem. And getting them to respond that, you know what, life is pretty good. And there are difficulties in life, but, it's okay. Generally, Hashem takes care of me. And that's turning darkness into sweet. Darkness into light. So in other words, this inyan of turning darkness into light, this is something we do all the time. You say Baruch Hashem on a day that's not so good, that's turning darkness into light, that's turning bitter into sweet. So just like this is the tachlis, if this is the purpose of creation, for us to look into darkness and to look into difficulties and to somehow find the kernel of goodness, the kernel of light that's contained in that darkness, in that misery, if that's the purpose of creation, then all the more so that has to be the focus on the most dark and difficult time of the year, of the 3 weeks. So I want to talk about how do we find light and how do we find sweetness in the worst sin that we still are suffering from, which is sinas chinam, senseless hate. The Gemara tells us that we had two temples, we had two Batei Mikdash. The Gemara tells us in Yuma that the first temple was destroyed because of the big three averas: idolatry, murder, and relationships that are unholy. Right? Avodah zarah, gilurai, shvichas damim. The Gemara says that's why the first temple was destroyed. So fine, those are big averas, those are big sins. The Gemara tells us why was the second temple destroyed? So the Gemara tells us it was because of sinas chinam. The Gemara says, the Gemara tells us in Yuma, that Beis Hamikdash Hasheni shayoiskim b'Torah b'mitzvahs v'gemilas chasadim. During the times of the second temple, Jews were learning, Jews were davening, Jews were performing mitzvahs, Jews were religious. So why was it destroyed? So it says the Gemara again, because of sinas chinam, senseless hate. L'lamdecha, says the Gemara, we see from here, sheshkula sinas chinam keneged shalosh averos achamuras, that sinas chinam, senseless hate, machlokas, infighting between one Jew and another, between one Jewish community and another, is as bad in Hashem's eyes as the big three averos. That's what the Gemara says. So we know this from the time that we're children. And the truth is, as we all know from Chazal, every generation of the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, isn't rebuilt. It's as if it was destroyed in that generation. In other words, the sin that caused the destruction of the temple, which was machlokas, infighting, hatred between one Jew and another, that's a sin that we still suffer from to this day. And that's what's holding back the third Beis Hamikdash from being rebuilt. So we have to find, so what I started from is this idea, we have to turn that which is bitter into that which is sweet. We have to understand, where is the source of sinas chinam? Where is it coming from? Where is it coming from on a deep level? The Psalm tells us that any sickness, any spiritual ailment that the Jewish person individually or the Jewish people collectively are experiencing, it's clearly something that's not natural. Because Jewish people naturally are holy, naturally are connected to Hashem, and naturally are drawn towards keeping Torah mitzvahs. And if the Jewish people are plagued by some spiritual problem, then that's an unnatural thing, and one has to figure out where it's coming from. So let's think about a little bit, just even on a superficial level, let's think about how strange sinas chinam is. that how distant and how foreign machlokas, infighting, is to the Jewish people. I'm going to tell you something, and this shouldn't be, it's unfortunately not shocking. But sinas chinam, senseless hate, is mostly found amongst religious Jews, right? If you have Jews that are not religious, they generally get along with each other. It's religious Jews. It's a crazy thing. It's religious Jews who are connected to our mitzvahs. There's, we're a very, very small population in number, but we have like 1 million subdivisions and subgroups. You know what I mean? So like some groups and some divisions are supposed to be like that. Ashkenazim and Sephardim and fine. But all the million and trillion different groups of, I have Maishal, Natural, all the different divisions, it's something that's not normal. More than that, where on earth is there the most machlokas, is there the most fighting amongst Jews? You know the answer. It's Israel, right? It's Israel, that's where it is. Again, so you could give all the explanations, all the superficial explanations. It's the politics and the pressure from the outside world, and it's too hot over there. I don't know. You can give all sorts of explanations. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense. At the end, it doesn't make sense that infighting should exist so much so in specifically religious Jews, and specifically in Eretz Yisrael. On a deeper level, when we look into sinas chinam, into fighting, into senseless hate, and by the way, senseless hate doesn't necessarily mean that you hate a person just because you don't like his nose. You could have a sophisticated reason not to like another Jew, but any reason you could come up with, it's senseless. Listen to what the Maral writes. The Maral writes in Netzach Yisrael the following thing in describing the true nature of the Jewish people. Maral says, "Ki Hashem yisparach shu yachid ba'olamai." We know Hashem is one, right? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. There's one God. Hashem is one. So says the Maral, it's not possible that Hashem shouldn't have a nation on earth that resembles Him. Hashem, amongst the nations of the world, there has to be one nation on earth that's godlike. That's godlike. Says the Maral, that has some parallel, that has some relationship with Hashem. That just like Hashem is one, so too there has to be a nation on earth which naturally, instinctively, are also one nation, one people, that are very, very much connected with one another. It says in Maharal, just like Hashem is one. V'heim Yisrael, and that's the Jewish people. There's the Jewish people naturally, in our healthy, natural state, are the opposite of senseless hate. The Jewish people naturally are inclined to love one another. That's the state, that's the natural, healthy state of the Jewish people. Says Maral, as the pasuk says, "Mi ka'amchi Yisrael," who is like the Jewish people, Goy echad ba'aretz, a nation that's one on earth. Just like there's one God in heaven, there's one nation on earth that's the Jewish people. So now, all the more so, sinas chinam, senseless hate, becomes very, very strange. Not only is it strange, on a very simple level, that why would we hate each other if the whole world is out to get us? We might as well band together to support each other. Not only is it strange in sociological terms, but it's strange in the essence of the Jewish people's neshama. The essence of the Jewish soul is united, one Jew with the other. And Davka, that nation of all nations, has the most divisions. Writes the Maharal, this question of how could there be sinas chinam, how could there be hatred and anger and animosity and small-mindedness from one Jew to the other, this question, this is a question that whether the non-Jewish world verbally asks it or not, they're thinking about it. This is a question, says the Maral, that the nations of the world address the Jewish people. And in truth, says the Maral, this question, this is a very terrible disgrace of the Jewish people in the eyes of the nations of the world. The nations of the world intuitively, deep in the reservoirs of their soul, recognize that the Jewish people should be one, if we're God's people, and therefore they're plagued, as we are, with this question: if we are one people, then how is it possible that there's so much hatred and so much anger and so much small-mindedness from one Jew to the other, from one community to the other? Says the Maral, the level of senseless hatred that the Jewish people have within their ranks is not found amongst the nations of the world. That's what Maral says in very strong terms. There's more anger and there's more hatred and more animosity and subdivisions amongst the Jewish people than we find in the nations of the world. So it's a great pella. It's a great pella. And the more we dig beneath the surface of sinas chinam, the more the question is begged: where does this unnatural, unhealthy sickness come from? Because again, it's completely unnatural to the Jewish person. If Jewish people go around and thinking of themselves, listen, okay, we're people that don't like each other, that's a big mistake. Because what we have to understand is that this problem of sinas chinam, it's very much skin deep. It's very much skin deep. It's not who we are. So the question is, we have to now figure out, where does it come from? Where does it come from? So let's dig a little deeper. Let's get into the psychology of the person who is plagued by sinas china. Again, every single one of us, everyone, even if you have a guy, a person, a man or woman, who's naturally a friendly, loving person, and he gets along with everyone, it's normal and natural for a person to have a bad day. So we're not talking about someone who just has a bad day, or there's just one individual person that somehow rubs them the wrong way or whatever. That could be explained away. What we're going to try to figure out is that if the Jewish people from the time of the Second Temple is collectively, nationally, are suffering from this sickness called senseless hate, it means it's not a random thing. We're not talking about random, generally nice people who happen not to get along every once in a while with someone. We're talking about that there's an undercurrent, there's a demon lying in every Jewish person's heart on a collective level that creates this anger, this animosity. So let's think about, let's get into this, into the mind of someone who is really truly plagued by sinas china. This person who hates another Jew, who finds fault in another Jew, this is a person who is angry, right? It's anger, it's kas. That's where truly the midah of sinas china, of hatred, comes from. It's from anger. He's angry at other people. He's small-minded. He's a person who judges others in a very narrow way. And he's full of he's a miserable, judgmental, angry person. That's what sinas china comes from. And such a person who has within his heart such anger and such unpleasantness, so it's going to come out that he's going to find reasons and find excuses to hate this guy and to hate that woman and so on. And he's going to blame this community for so on. All that anger and all that sourness is going to come out in sinas china. Now we know as well that a major sin that someone who hates another Jew is going to fall into, unfortunately, is lashon hara. Lashon hara, speaking negative about other Jews. That's what sinas china is about. So, to understand the light that's contained in sinas china, which is what we're going to try to find, and to try to turn that which is bitter, sinas china, into that which is sweet, so we have to look in Chumash where it describes the person who says lashon hara. Because again, lashon hara, evil speech, saying negative things about another Jew, that's a symptom, right? That's a symptom. That's the person's sinas china, that's the person's anger coming out in a way of lashon hara. When the pasuk tells us in Parshas Tazria, when it opens up, when it begins to tell us about the person who speaks lashon hara, it says the following term. It describes this person who speaks lashon hara with the term adam ki yeh b'ar basara. It describes the speaker of lashon hara. In other words, it describes the person who's plagued with senseless hate as with the term adam. Now, what's strange about that term adam, or man, what's strange about that term is that the Zohar tells us over there that of all the terminology that can be used to describe a human being, we have many words in Hebrew to describe a human being. There's adam, there's ish, isha, there's gever, so on. There's other terminologies to describe a human being, man or woman. Says the Zohar Kadosh, the term Adam is the greatest description of a human being. Adam is the term that you use to describe a tzaddik, a tzaddikus. Adam is the term that you use to describe someone that's holy. So the question is then, therefore, how could the term Adam be used to describe someone who speaks lashon hara about other Jews? How could you use that term to describe someone who hates other Jews? So listen to what the Ishbitzer says. What we're going to be focusing on tonight is a teaching from the Ishbitzer, the Mei Shiloach. It's an unbelievable thing, unbelievable insight. He writes the following thing. The reason why the Torah uses the term Adam to describe someone who speaks ill about other Jews, who hates other Jews, is he says like this, because this person is plagued by anger. He's an angry, judgmental person. Says the Ishbitzer, this quality is more predominantly found. Who's the most angry people? Says the Ishbitzer, the people that are the most angry is Banashim Gedolim. It's with people with very, very big souls, with great potential. Says the Ishbitzer, people with big neshamas, people with big souls, people with big potential, don't find happiness in the trivialities, in the smallness of this world. Every delight, everything that they find themselves involved in, it never brings them satisfaction. Because deep down within them, they have a neshama, they have a soul, which is yearning for something greater. So whenever they're involved in things of this world, not only does it not bring them satisfaction, it makes them angry. It makes them frustrated. Says the Ishbitzer, and what is going to satisfy them? The only thing that's going to truly satisfy a Jew with a great soul are great spiritual things. But the problem is great spiritual things are experienced only after a person passes away. So he says the goodness of the next world, who behester mehem ba'olam haza, is hidden from them in this world. So this person, so it's a crazy thing. This person who has an unbelievably big, deep soul that's yearning for great things. So he finds his life full of emptiness. He doesn't find satisfaction in anything. He'll put himself in work, he'll put himself in his family, nothing makes him satisfied. Because truly what's going to satisfy him is something that's beyond his understanding right now, it's beyond his touch. So the more he throws himself into things of this world which he wants to be satisfied from, he becomes more and more frustrated. I'll give you an example. Right? Let's say, we'll go from a few examples. The simplest example, let's say you have a kid in school, a very, very young child, right? So if there's any teachers, they'll know, and parents as well, that sometimes the most difficult kids in school, in the class, are the brightest, most gifted ones, right? And the kids that are most gifted and most bright, and the teacher says, the lesson in 10 minutes, and the kid gets it, but the rest of the class needs a full day to understand it. And now this kid, because he has so much potential, right? Because he has so much insight and so much, whether it be intellectual or emotional capabilities, he's now, whether he's able to express it or not, because he might not be able to express this because he's a small child. But there's a frustration that this child feels sitting in a class when he's being given things that are supposed to be satisfying but are not. So what happens to this child? So he starts making trouble. That's what the kid does. So again, little kids, little trouble. So he talks about raising his hand, or he throws erasers at his friends, whatever, small little things. Now this same experience happens to older children. Let's say you have a person who's artistic. You have a person who has within himself a painter. But for whatever reason in life, and is being raised by his parents or his school, whatever the case may be, he's never allowed to bring out that artistic quality. So we know that person might very well become a very destructive person, where instead of using his talents for good, to create beautiful paintings, to inspire people and so on, he's now going to become an angry, frustrated, miserable human being. That's what happens. That's what happens. The greatest Rishonim, the greatest wicked people in our history have been the most gifted. That's the way it is. Simple people don't create, big revolutions. Revolutions are created by very, very deep people that have a lot within them. And just when those energies are not being tapped into properly and healthfully, then what that turns into is an angry, frustrated, bitter person. And that bitter, angry, frustrated person begins to look at everything in life in a bitter, angry, frustrated way. So this person who's angry, so what the Ishbitzer is telling us is a very, very deep thing. We have to turn that which is bitter into that which is sweet. We look at this guy who's angry, bitter, miserable, judgmental, just a misery to be around. So the initial reaction when you meet such a person is, that guy's just a miserable human being. But in truth, it's Adam ki yeh bar basaro. This person who's angry, he's an Adam. He's an Adam, which means he has the potential within him to be an unbelievable big tzaddik. Whether it be intellectual capabilities, whether it be emotional capabilities, whatever the case may be, there's something within him that's not being tapped into. And that untapped energy is frustrating him, it's making him angry, and that anger is then affecting his vision and everything else in life. Let me tell you another example. The Ishbitzer had a son, the Beis Yaakov, Rabbi Yaakov of Ishbitz. So the Beis Yaakov on that parsha, Parshas Hazriya, explains his father's teaching in the following way. He said, very often we find in life, unfortunately, there are people, whether they be teenagers or even older, that are angry at God. They're angry at God. And they go around telling people that they don't believe in God. They don't believe in God. They rebel against Hashem. So says the Beis Yaakov, when you meet a person who claims to hate God, to be angry at Hashem, so your initial reaction is to such a person, well, this person doesn't have emunah. This person doesn't believe. This person is a non-believer. Because if he really believed, he wouldn't be angry. He'd be like me, right? But when you meet this person, and he claims to be angry and miserable, and he hates religion, and he hates Judaism, so your initial reaction is, this person must not believe in God. Says the Beis Yaakov, that's a big mistake. Not only does he believe in God, he believes in God a lot. How is that? So says the Beis Yaakov the following thing. If a person truly did not believe in God, if you for a moment, let's imagine what it would be like not to believe in God, which means that everything that happens in your individual life and in the history of the world is complete coincidence. It's complete coincidence. It has no meaning. It has no deep, significant meaning. If a person truly believed like that, so says the Beis Yaakov, Ma yichais, then what reason is there to be angry? Al mi yichais, who are you supposed to be angry at? Hakol b'mikra, everything is coincidence. So yeah, you could be upset that your car broke down, but you're not going to be angry. You're not going to use that as energy to rebel against Judaism. Whatever. It's the whole thing is ridiculous. You don't believe in God. You don't believe in Judaism. It's one big baloney. People are just convincing themselves that there is a God. The whole thing is baloney. So you're not going to get angry. Whatever. You just go on your life. You go on your life. Who gets angry at Judaism? Who gets angry at Hashem? Says the Beis Yaakov. However, if a person truly is a mammon, if a person truly does believe in Hashem, but what? And he recognizes that which happens in his life and that which happens in the Jewish people's life is not a coincidence. It's happening it's happening from Hashem, and it's happening for a reason. And he was told to believe that everything Hashem does is for the good. And then he looks around in his life and he sees everything's falling apart. And he looks around at his people's lives and everything around him is falling apart. That's a person who gets angry. That's a person who has a demon inside of him that convinces him to rebel against Judaism, because truly he does believe. And it's his belief that's not letting him be happy. That's what it is. It's his belief that's not letting him come to terms with that which he sees with his eyes that's telling him not to believe. Everything in his life is telling him that there is no God, but truly he does believe in God. And that conflict between that which he truly believes in his heart and that which his eyes are telling him, it creates an inner turmoil and an inner anger. And it's a frustration. The anger, his rebelliousness against Hashem, his rebelliousness against Judaism, is not that he doesn't believe or that he wants to rebel. It's coming from a frustration. It's coming from a feeling of helplessness. We know this psychologically as well. When a person feels helpless, very often the response of helplessness is to try to sort of build up one's own self-esteem by hating other people, by hating other things to build up his own sense of self. But it's coming from a feeling of helplessness, of abandonment. But if a person truly didn't believe in God, there's nothing to be abandoned. No one abandoned you, there's no one there. But if there is someone there, if Hashem is running your life, but He's not running it the way that it seems fit to you, now you feel abandoned, and you feel frustrated, and you feel angry and bitter. That's where it's coming from. There's a story for the Kotzker. It's a famous ma'isa that a chassid once came to the Kotzker Rebbe and said that, Rebbe, I can't sleep at night. I'm very, very distraught. I don't think I believe in God. I'm having questions of faith. My emunah, my faith is shaken. I'm not sure if I believe in God. So the Kotzker said, of course you believe in God. So the chassid said, I'm telling you, I don't think I do. I don't think I do. So the chassid said, if you truly didn't believe in God, you'd be able to sleep very well. Be able to sleep very, very well. The fact that you're not sleeping at night because you're worried about not believing in God means you do believe in God. It's just for some reason, the God that you believe in, you're not able to see Him in your life. You're not able to experience Him in your life. So it's making you frustrated, and it's making you angry, and it's making you feel helpless. And that's what's keeping you up at night. But you do believe. If you truly didn't believe, you'd sleep like a baby. This is what it means. So now let's think about it in a deeper level. Let's go a little bit deeper into what was taking place during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash. We started off by explaining that during the second Beis HaMikdash, the spiritual sickness that the Jewish people were suffering from, and we still suffer from to this day, is senseless hate. It's sinas chinam, it's machlokas, it's infighting, it's anger. Where does this anger come from? So we just learned from the Ishbitzer that in truth, anger is a quality that's foreign to a Jewish person. It's not natural for a Jew to be angry and bitter and small-minded. That's not a natural thing. Where does it come from? It comes from the fact that you're an Adam. It comes from the fact that what you really, truly feel and need is very, very big, lofty spiritual experiences. And when you're not getting that, you're like that little kid in school who's not being challenged, right? Who's not being given things to bring out his true potential, and he gets angry and frustrated. What's the difference between what happened in the Second Temple to make the Jewish people so angry? So we know this. What's the difference between the First Temple and the Second Temple? The difference was as follows. The essential difference. The First Temple was a time period of prophecy. Time period of prophecy. Prophecy means, we have a misunderstanding what prophecy means. A lot of us think that prophecy means that every once in a while the Navi, while he was sleeping, would have a dream and God would tell him what's going to happen tomorrow. That's not what prophecy was. Prophecy was an unbelievable emotional experience of the divine presence. Prophecy was that the Jewish people, not just individual prophets, prophecy was an experience that the Jewish people collectively felt, and it became most pronounced in individual Jews. But the spirit of prophecy permeated Jewish life during the times of the First Temple, where every Jew naturally felt very, very connected emotionally and spiritually to his Creator. And the Jewish person would go around his life in the most mundane things in life and feel an awareness and feel an attachment to the Creator. That's the spirit. That's what it was. When the First Temple was destroyed, the lights went off. That's what happened. When the First Temple was destroyed, prophecy was taken away. True divine inspiration, the deepest levels of attachment, of experiencing the divine was shut from the Jewish people. And during the Second Temple, the Jewish people were thrown into what? Into the darkness of this world. So now you have two options. When the Jewish people, when the light of spirituality, when that artistic side of the Jewish people, when the imaginative side of the Jewish people, when the emotional side of the Jewish people was shut off, right? When they were not allowed to express their true selves spiritually through prophecy, because prophecy was taken away at the destruction of the First Temple. So one of two things can happen. Either the Jewish people turn around and say, okay, listen, it was nice while it lasted, but no, let's just move on. Or, that's not what happened. What happened was, the Jewish people realized that, in truth, that aspect, that spiritual awareness, that emotion, that imagination, that experience of prophecy, we need that. We need that. That's part of who we are. That's part of our spiritual genetics inside of us. And when that artistic side of Judaism, when that experiential aspect of Judaism was shut off, then we became like those children in school that weren't being challenged anymore. We became like that person who's artistic, who's not allowed to express his artistic side. And what happened? We became angry. We became bitter. We became frustrated. But not because we're angry, bitter people, be'etzem. In essence, that's not who we are. In truth, we are artists. We are unbelievable. We are people that have the capacity naturally to become prophets. And what happens to a prophet? What happens to a prophet who isn't allowed to experience prophecy? Such a person becomes a miserable human being. Such a person becomes bitter and angry and sees everything in that bitter, angry way. Let me read to you what Rav Kook wrote. Rav Kook, only the way he can write, Rav Kook wrote in one of his essays, he wrote an essay called Tzimon L'Kel Chai, the thirst to the living God. Rav Kook over there is talking about how in a natural state, naturally for a Jew, the only place that he can find true comfort is in the hands of Hashem, is in the experience, is in the emotional attachment between the Jew and Hashem through prophecy and divine inspiration and so on. Listen to what Rav Kook writes. You know, it's an amazing thing. He describes a Jew who's not able to experience that, like that kid who's an artist who's not allowed to experience his art. He describes that experience of a Jew as it's like he's in a ship in the middle of the ocean who's being thrown from wave to wave. Who, in himself, he finds this inner turmoil, this inner opposite of peace, this chaos within his heart, and it's not letting him rest. And then Rav Kook says every once in a while the ship that he's sailing on in his mind, in this chaotic ocean of life, that he's being thrown from one thing to the other, and he's never able to truly be happy because he's never really tapped into that which he has within himself. So Rav Kook says every once in a while that ship finds itself resting on some heap of garbage that accumulates in the ocean, which in other words means that sometimes a Jew finds rest by just shutting off that part of himself, by just pretending he's not an artist. Every once in a while he just throws himself into all sorts of ugliness of this world just to escape the pain, right? A lot of people suffer, God forbid, from alcohol problems or drug problems and so on. Where is that coming from? It's trying to escape. That's what it is. There's something deep within him that's making him angry and frustrated, and you know, he looks at life as a miserable place, and he wants to escape life. So says Rav Kook, that's the experience of a Jew, of the Jewish people, when the first temple was destroyed and prophecy was taken away, and we weren't allowed to express that inner artist within ourselves. So now life is miserable, life is angry, we become angry, life is chaotic. So every once in a while we just try to escape. We try to escape. So we throw ourselves in business. We throw ourselves in pleasures of this world. We throw ourselves in all sorts of problems just to escape the true reality. But says Rav Kook, but when the boat rests on that heap of garbage, and it feels like it's safe, right? It feels like, okay, this is our destination. The waves are not breaking against the boat anymore. But soon the boat is then heaped off the heap of garbage and thrown back into the chaos of life. Says Rav Kook the following thing. Malka menuchasenu, the real place of where the book can truly rest, says Rav Kook, is Irak Belokim. It's in the hands of Hashem. It's in that experience of the divine. It's with prophecy. It's with an emotional, a personal attachment to Hashem. An emotional attachment to Hashem. But the problem is, once this first temple was taken away and prophecy was shut, so now the problem is, if the place of our rest, the place that will make us truly feel at home and at peace in life, is by God, God is above, He's beyond our grasp. That's the problem. That's the problem. Says Rav Kook, Hashem is beyond all physical matter, and therefore it feels impossible for us to really come in contact with that. So says Rav Kook, such beautiful words. When the neshama yearns for that higher explosion of light, when that neshama, which naturally is yearning to that unbelievably brilliant light of the divine presence of the first temple, then even when it experiences good things of the second temple, it learns, it davens, it does mitzvahs, it does all good things, it never feels satisfied. It never feels satisfied. He says, even in the light of Torah, even in the light of mitzvahs that a person does, still there's something unsatisfying. He still feels he's being thrown from wave to wave. He says, even the most beautiful things in life, you could go to the Grand Canyon. You could be, a year, it's during the summer, people go on vacation, right? If a person has a very stressful year, so a lot of times people think, we'll go on vacation, we'll get away from the stress. But most of us carry the stress with us. So you could be standing by the Grand Canyon, looking out into the beautiful, chasm, the greatest experience of physical sight of this world, the Grand Canyon, and you're still thinking about, all the stresses of New York City. Because nothing is ultimately going to satisfy that heart that's truly yearning and craving for something that's beyond the Grand Canyon. So nothing is satisfying. So now what happens? So now this person who's miserable, who's stressed out from a full year of living in New York City, goes to the Grand Canyon and he thinks he's going to escape. And what happens when he looks into the Grand Canyon? And now the only thing he can think about are the stuff that's been making him crazy all the year. He gets even more stressed out. Because now he says to himself, now there's nowhere for me to go. There's nowhere for me to go. I now realize that thing that the ship was resting on was just a heap of garbage. And it never really satisfied me. They didn't get to my place of menucha. So says Rav Kook, so he says, Oz, what happens then? Misnavel ha'olam be'ineha. Says Rav Kook, and this is what the Jewish people are suffering from to this day. When the Jewish person, the Jewish people feel this, then their reaction is that the world becomes disgraceful. The world becomes ugly. You become angry, you become frustrated, you become angry at yourself, you become angry at the God that put you in this place, and you begin to hate life, you begin to hate the people around you. Says Rav Kook, he kolkach misracheves bekirva, because the soul is so expansive within this person, ad sha'olam kuloi im kol gashmiyusav ruichin yoseha, to the point his soul is so big that he looks at everything in this world physically and spiritually that he's able to attach himself to in this physical world, with all the experiences of physical and spiritual life. It's like a prison. It's like a prison. And oxygen becomes a poison. Oxygen becomes something that chokes him. This is what the Jewish people, that's what Sinas Chinam comes from. So we start off by saying, where does Sinas Chinam come from? It's unnatural, it's unholy. The job of a Jew in this world is to find that which is dark and to turn it into that which is light, to turn bitter into sweet. So the most bitter thing that the Jewish people are suffering from is Sinas Chinam. And we said Sinas Chinam is a sickness that plagues specifically the religious world, all the more so than the non-religious world, and specifically in Israel. So how do we turn that into light? But the answer is what the Psalm are telling us, understand where it's coming from. The anger, the bitterness, the resentfulness, the small-mindedness that the Jewish people feel, it's coming because we're prophets. That's where it's coming from. The Jewish people are naturally, in our natural state, are mamish prophets. And when that prophetic light is hidden from that person with prophetic potential, he becomes the angriest person on earth and the most frustrated person on earth. David HaMelech, when he first became king, I'll end in a few minutes. When David HaMelech first became king, so we know that he was running away from Saul, from King Shaul. It's a very difficult thing to figure out that relationship, Bechlal. But David HaMelech was running away. So the pasuk tells us in Sefer Shmuel Chav Beis, the pasuk tells us that David HaMelech had within him his first Chassidim, the first students, the first chevra of David HaMelech. So who is his first Chassidim? Who are his first followers? So it's an unbelievable thing. The pasuk tells us in Shmuel that the people that first flocked to David HaMelech were the angry, bitter, miserable people. Morei nefesh. The people that were of bitter spirit. Bitter spirit. So it's a strange thing. Why would David HaMelech, when he's beginning his malchus, David HaMelech is the beginning of Mashiach, right? David HaMelech is the beginning of the redemption. Why would David HaMelech begin his malchus with angry, bitter people? But the answer is because that's exactly what we're talking about, because David HaMelech had the eyes to see. That contained within these angry, bitter people is that they're looking for something that they can't find. They're looking for something beyond that which was given to them in school. They're looking for something beyond that which was given to them in their house. That's what makes them angry and bitter. David HaMelech saw in these people the beginning of Mashiach. He saw within them people that are yearning for something more than the religious world that was around them. And that's what was making them angry and bitter. Those were his first Chassidim. Because those are the deepest people on earth, are the angry people. So where does that leave us? You know, the Gemara tells us that on the day of Tisha B'Av, Chazal say that on the day of Tisha B'Av, Mashiach is born. Mashiach is born. So you know the Maral already explains that it doesn't mean anything physical. There's a person in every generation that's worthy of being Mashiach once we're worthy of having him revealed. But says the Maharal, it means that the essence of what Mashiach is about, the power of Mashiach, becomes renewed every Tisha B'Av. So why is that? The answer is like this. Because Tisha B'Av is the one day of the year, and the 3 weeks are the one time period of the year, where the Jewish people finally come to terms and finally figure out where is our anger coming from. That's what Tisha B'Av is about. This is the avoid of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is not just about sitting on the floor and crying about what we lost and trying to find people to blame. That's not what Tisha B'Av is about. Tisha B'Av is about coming to terms to try to figure out why it happened. And not to just be satisfied with the answer, okay, well, sinas chinam. Why? Tisha B'Av is a time of introspection where a person finds within himself the answer. Why is it that we're so angry? Why is it that we're unsatisfied? Why is it that I'm bitter? Why is it that I hate this other Jew? You know the answer is Tisha B'Av. The Beis HaMikdash was taken away. Prophecy was taken away. That's why. When the Jewish people recognize that and find the source of their inner bitterness, that's the beginning of Mashiach. That's David HaMelech collecting within, making a chevra of bitter people. Those bitter people that were around David HaMelech's Tish in the beginning of his Malchus, that was the people of Tisha B'Av. That's what it means. So Tisha B'Av is when Mashiach is born, because Tisha B'Av is a time where people finally begin to understand where it's coming from. So what's the answer? So how do we get out of this bitterness, right? So I painted a pretty ugly picture, right? It's like, once the Mashiach is not here, there's no prophecy, we're doomed to be angry people. So Baruch Hashem, that's not true. Mashiach will come, and the truth is, as we get closer to Mashiach, people are getting angry and angrier. Because the light of Mashiach, we sense it behind the door, and the longer it takes for it to penetrate, for that door to open, the more angry we become, and the more bitter we become. So what's the answer? How do we find happiness until Mashiach comes? Until Mashiach comes. So Rav Kook ends this piece with the following thing. We have to teach ourselves how to enter into the world of Mashiach before Mashiach comes. We have to teach each other how to enter the world of being happy. How do we take away the bitterness before Mashiach comes to take away for us? Says Rav Kook, Hashar hu. So what is the gate? What's the answer? What's the antidote to sinas chinam? Says Rav Kook, the answer is holokus hamezgala ba'olam. It means finding Hashem's presence, finding Hashem's communications with you, even when He's not openly talking to you. Let me explain. You know, prophecy was, again, like I said, prophecy was where the Jewish person, Imamish experienced, he felt, he knew in his bones that Hashem was with him, Hashem was talking to him, and Hashem was guiding him in life. So he said the Beis HaMikdash was taken away. Prophecy was closed. We're not able to unleash that part of ourselves anymore, and it's making us angry and frustrated. But in truth, says Rav Kook, and all the tzaddikim say this, in truth, Hashem never stopped talking. Hashem truly never stopped communicating. That artistic side of us is still able to express itself, albeit in not a revealed and clear way. Says Rav Kook, we have to find Hashem ba'olam, in the physical world, B'kol yof yov vadaro, in all of its physical beauty and splendor. B'kol ruach and neshama, in every breath that a Jew takes, in every soul that a Jew comes in contact with. B'kol chai v'remes, in every animal, in every insect. B'kol tzemach u'perach, with every blade of grass, with every flower. B'kol goy v'mlacha, every nation, every kingdom. B'yam v'galav, in the ocean, all of its ways. B'shvir shachak, b'hadras ha'moiris, in the light of the sun, and so on. We have to find Hashem talking to us in everything. The more a person begins to try to listen to Hashem's communication in a subtle way, the happier you'll become. Let me tell you just a quick story just to explain this concept, just to bring it down a little bit. The Maisa goes very, very quickly. The Maisa goes that Rabbi Zusha from Anapoli, it's big tzaddik. Rabbi Zusha was once walking down the road. He was an older man at that time already. He was walking down the road, and a person was driving a wagon, coming up the street. And the wagon driver, with horses and so on, he was carrying hay in his wagon. There's hay in the wagon. So the Maisa was that this wagon driver, as the horse was pulling up the street towards Rav Zusha, the horse got spooked or something, whatever. The horse, jumped up, and the wagon full of hay fell over. So this wagon driver is all frustrated. He's angry. It's his parnasa. So he gets out trying to schlep the hay back up on the wagon, and he calls to Rav Zusha. He doesn't know who it is. He calls to Rav Zusha from across the street. Hey, come and help me. Help me pick up the hay. Help me pick up the hay. So Rav Zusha is ready to old man. He says, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's too heavy. I can't. I'm going to hurt myself. So the person in his frustration said to Rav Zusha, he said, it's not that you can't. You don't want to. That's what he said. So Rav Zusha began to cry. He said, why? He said, because when this Jew was telling me, pick up the hay, that was Hashem talking to me. Hashem talks to us in every conversation we experience and everything that we see, Hashem is talking to us. And Hashem was telling me through this person, Zusha, pick up the hay. Hay, in Hashem's name, the letter hay, symbolizes Hashem's presence on earth. In other words, make a Kiddush Hashem, bring up the glory of the Jewish people and Hashem in the nations of the world. Make a Kiddush Hashem. And when I told him I can't, and he said to me, not that you can't, you don't want to, that was Hashem talking. So that's just one example. The antidote to Sinas Chinam is to recognize and to remember that ever since the Beis Hamikdash was taken away, we are still able to express that inner artist within ourselves. Hashem is still talking to us. We just have to open our ears. Because every conversation we have, every experience we have to close our eyes, whether physically or metaphorically, and try to believe and try to pick up on what does Hashem tell me right now, and to trust that Hashem is talking to us. The more we open our ears to hear that which Hashem is communicating, and to remember that prophecy was not taken away, then the happier we'll be, and the more we'll find menucha even in this chaos of this world. So Rav Kook ends off, and he says, "B'dimyonis kol meshayrer." That this is what Jewish poetry should be about. This is what Jewish artistry should be about. It should be about finding Hashem's presence in all the most mundane things. That's what makes a Jew happy. No, that's the avodah of Tisha B'Av. The avodah of Tisha B'Av is not to be miserable, to be angry, or to be sad. That's not the Tisha B'Av. It's to be sad. But it's to try to find the answer of why I'm sad, why am I angry, why did this happen. To turn that which is bitter into that which is sweet. That's the avodah. Let me end off with a quick ma'aseh and we'll stop. Ma'aseh goes, I just saw this recently. After World War II, I don't have to go through World War II was a difficult time. There was a lot of bitterness. A lot of people came out of World War II angry. Right? A lot of people came out of World War II rebellious against God. Right? There was a lot of Adams. There were a lot of big people that had a lot of big questions from World War II. After World War II, the Skolena Rebbe found himself in the city. He was a survivor. He went through all sorts of problems, Gehennims in the Holocaust. He found himself in the city of Chernovitz. It's in the Ukraine. And in this city, in the Ukraine, there's obviously not a lot of supplies just to even function as a community over there, whoever was left. So to make matters worse, it was a few weeks before Pesach. So not only do you have to get life together just to function, now you have to make Pesach as well. So the Skolena Rebbe had certain contacts, whatever. He spent a lot of energy to try to gather together some wheat to make matzah, because you couldn't just go to the store and buy wheat. You can't have shmur matzah like that for the Seder. So he had a special thing that he put a lot of effort into to find wheat in order to make shmur matzah for Pesach, for the Seder night. And it was a big thing that, in that community, those survivors, if you wanted matzah, there was a rationing. The Skolena would give you just the amount of matzah that you needed on Pesach just to get through Pesach, and not more, because there wasn't a lot to go around. So the Vizhnitzer Rebbe was also, he needed matzah. So he heard that the Skolena Rebbe had his supply. So the Vizhnitzer Rebbe sent his Gabbai, I think it was his son, he sent his son to the Skolena Rebbe to go get matzah for himself. So the Skolena Rebbe gave the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, he sent the Vizhnitzer Rebbe 3 matzahs, right? Because we need in the Seder 3 matzahs. So the Gabbai said, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe said to the Rebbe, he said, my father sent me a message that he needs 6 matzahs. He needs 6 matzahs, not just 3. So the Skolena Rebbe said, okay, fine, I guess. There must be someone else that needs as well, so fine, he gave him 6 matzahs. Right before Pesach, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe sent his son back to the Skolena Rebbe. And he said, my father sent me those 3 extra matzahs that you sent me before. I'm giving them back to you. So the Skolena Rebbe said, what's going on? So he said, my father told me that you made X amount of matzahs, rationing it out to people, and he said, for sure, you're not going to leave any matzahs for yourself. For sure, you're going to give everything away to other people. You're going to have nothing for yourself. So the Vintage Rebbe says, so I'm going to ask for 6 matzahs, 3 for myself and 3 for you. And after you finish giving off everything to everyone else, these are your matzahs that you should have. That's so nice. Look at this. These are people that both, if there's anyone that could be angry, and there was anyone that could have small-mindedness, and to think only about themselves, are these people that went through the Holocaust, that lost everything. If there's anyone that could have that bitterness, that anger, that sinas chinam, to think only about themselves, are these people. But look at the tzaddikim of the Jewish people. Look at how holy the Jewish people are. That as angry as we could be, and as miserable and as small-minded as we can be, but the great tzaddikim that find Hashem even in the worst places in life, that still hear the voice of Hashem calling to them, even in the hell of the Holocaust, those people come out of the Holocaust thinking about other Jews, thinking about how to help another Jew. Instead of being full of anger, they're full of happiness. No, that's our tefillah for this time of year. That we shouldn't, when it comes Tisha B'Av already, we should be in Yerushalayim, we should be talking about Golus as a history lesson already. But if that doesn't happen, and we end up on the floor on Tisha B'Av, then we have to be focusing on the source of where the darkness is coming from. And the more you dig beneath the surface of the dark, the more you'll find light. No, that's our bracha to all of us, our tefillah, that we should be zeicha to all the darkness in all of our lives should be turned into light. All the bitterness of all the Jewish people's lives should be turned into that which is sweet. Amen.